They believed this was their moment, but they had no idea their meticulously constructed world was about to unravel at my command. The air in the executive boardroom was thick with anticipation, heavy with the scent of stale coffee and unvoiced ambition. Ronan, my ex-husband, leaned back in his plush leather chair, a smug smirk playing on his lips, confident in his perceived indispensability. Across from him, Aurelia, my former best friend, offered a saccharine smile to the outgoing CEO, her eyes darting nervously around the room, yet undeniably radiating a subtle aura of triumph. This was the moment they believed their careers were about to ascend, possibly even placing them above me, an independent consultant invited to observe the transition. They had no idea. I sat quietly at the far end of the long mahogany table, my posture impeccably straight, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in my right hand, quickly suppressed. My gaze was fixed on the intricate pattern of the Persian rug, but my mind was a whirlwind of memories and meticulously laid plans. I listened to the customary farewells, the platitudes, the quiet shuffling of papers. Ronan cleared his throat, about to interject with some self-important comment, no doubt expecting to be lauded for his recent, albeit minor, project success. Aurelia adjusted her silk scarf, her eyes meeting mine briefly, a flicker of condescension there. They believed I was simply a relic of their past, a cautionary tale, perhaps even an object of pity. They saw the composed exterior, the elegant suit, the controlled demeanor, and mistook it for vulnerability or, worse, irrelevance. But beneath that calm facade, a decade of strategic brilliance and unyielding resolve was about to converge. What they didn't know, couldn't possibly fathom then, was that every step I had taken, every sacrifice I had made since that fateful day had led me precisely to this moment, to this room, to this role. And their carefully constructed world was about to unravel. My journey to that boardroom began exactly 10 years prior, with a betrayal so profound it felt like the very ground beneath me had dissolved. I was 28, full of youthful idealism, building a life with Ronan, whom I believed was my soulmate. Aurelia, my best friend since childhood, was my confidant, my sister by choice. We were inseparable, a trio, or so I thought. The discovery was brutal, not a sudden explosion, but a slow creeping realization, like a poison seeping into every pore of my existence. Hints became whispers, whispers became undeniable truths. Ronan and Aurelia, behind my back, had been building their own twisted version of a life together, mocking my trust, my love, my very presence. The day I finally confronted them, the air crackled with their thinly veiled arrogance. Ronan, ever the charmer, tried to minimize it, blaming me for being too focused on work, for not understanding his needs. Aurelia, the master manipulator, feigned shock, tears, and then, a chillingly cold defensiveness, accusing me of paranoia. There was no remorse, only a self-serving justification of their actions. I walked away from that confrontation not with anger but with an icy clarity. The pain was immense, a physical ache in my chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of something else, an absolute, unwavering determination. I realized then that their betrayal wasn't a punishment, but a catalyst. It stripped away my illusions, laid bare my vulnerabilities, and in doing so, forged an unyielding inner strength I never knew I possessed. I left everything behind. The apartment, the shared dreams, the friendships that suddenly felt tainted. I started anew, not just geographically, but fundamentally. My pain became my fuel, my anger transmuted into ambition. I poured every ounce of my energy into my career. I enrolled in executive education programs, late-night courses, devouring every textbook, every case study, every financial report I could get my hands on. I networked relentlessly, not for social validation but for strategic alliances. My secret weapon wasn't a hidden contact or a trove of data. It was my commitment to absolute excellence and my relentless pursuit of knowledge. I dissect industries, analyze market trends, understand corporate governance from the ground up. I learned to speak the language of power, to read the unspoken cues, to anticipate the next move. While Ronan sought shortcuts and Aurelia played corporate politics, I was meticulously building a fortress of competence. I never spoke ill of them. I simply disappeared from their lives, dedicating myself to a future where my success was not dependent on anyone else's approval or betrayal. They probably assumed I was wallowing in self-pity, failing somewhere in obscurity. Little did they know I was quietly sharpening my blade, preparing for a battle they didn't even know was coming. As the years rolled by, my ascent was quiet but undeniable. I moved from a mid-level manager at a competitive firm to a crucial director, then a vice president and eventually, a highly sought-after executive consultant. My reputation preceded me. Sharp, strategic, ruthless in business, yet impeccably fair. I took calculated risks, spearheaded successful mergers, and turned around failing divisions. While I was building my empire, I kept a peripheral eye on the company where Ronan and Aurelia had landed. It was a well-established corporation, a behemoth in its sector, but it had grown stagnant, mired in internal politics and resistant to innovation. I heard whispers through my network: inefficient departments, missed opportunities, a corporate culture that rewarded apathy over initiative. And predictably, I heard about Ronan and Aurelia. They had both climbed to mid-level management, not through exceptional merit, but through sheer tenure and careful avoidance of any truly challenging responsibilities. Ronan was known for delegating heavily and taking credit for others' work. Aurelia for her social maneuvering and subtly undermining colleagues. They were precisely the kind of dead weight that dragged down a company. My plan began to crystallize not as an act of revenge, but as a strategic business opportunity. The company was ripe for a takeover, or a serious restructure. I began to present my analysis to the board of a major investment firm I had consulted for previously. I detailed the company's vulnerabilities, but also its immense untapped potential if it were led with vision and decisiveness. I didn't mention Ronan or Aurelia. They were insignificant pawns in a much larger game. I spent months meticulously crafting the acquisition strategy, negotiating terms, and assembling a dream team of executives. My ultimate goal wasn't just to acquire a company. It was to prove to myself, and perhaps unconsciously to the universe, that I could transform even the most bitter defeat into a resounding victory. Ronan and Aurelia, completely oblivious, continued to operate within their bubble of mediocrity, occasionally even sending me an email about some industry event they were attending, a passive-aggressive reminder of their continued existence, perhaps even a subtle attempt to gauge if I was still suffering. I would respond politely, professionally, betraying nothing of the impending seismic shift heading their way. They perceived my polite detachment as weakness, my quiet ambition as a lack of competitive spirit. They were so wrong. The climax arrived with a precision that would have made a Swiss watchmaker proud. The outgoing CEO, Mr. Thompson, had just finished his farewell speech. The room was buzzing, the board members anticipating the announcement of his successor. Ronan leaned forward, an almost imperceptible grin on his face as if he knew something, perhaps expecting an internal promotion for himself or Aurelia. Aurelia looked equally expectant, her eyes fixed on Mr. Davies, the chairman of the board. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, silence falling like a sudden curtain. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the hushed room, "it is with great pleasure that I announce the future direction of this company. After extensive deliberation and a unanimous vote, the board has decided on a new CEO, someone with a proven track record of innovation, strategic growth, and unparalleled leadership." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, finally settling on me. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my expression remained perfectly serene, a mask I had perfected over years. I met his gaze, a subtle nod confirming our shared secret. "Please join me in welcoming our new Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Kaelen Hayes." The words hung in the air, a silent explosion. Ronan's smug expression dissolved instantly, replaced by utter bewilderment. His jaw dropped, his eyes wide with disbelief, then dawning horror. Aurelia, usually so composed, gasped audibly, her face draining of all color. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes darting between me and the chairman, then back to me, desperately searching for a flicker of a joke, a mistake. The hushed whisper started, quickly growing into a low murmur as others connected the dots. The Kaelen Hayes, the one who had disappeared years ago, the one Ronan and Aurelia had so publicly betrayed. I rose slowly, deliberately, my movements graceful and controlled. I smoothly walked past Ronan, who was now visibly trembling, his face a grotesque mask of shock and abject humiliation. I passed Aurelia, whose eyes were still fixed on me, now filled with a desperate, pleading terror. I felt nothing but a quiet satisfaction, a profound sense of vindication that was entirely devoid of malice. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the undeniable triumph of resilience and intellect. I reached the podium, meeting the gazes of the stunned board members, my new subordinates, and most importantly, my former husband and best friend, who were now irrevocably under my command. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," I said, my voice clear, steady, and imbued with an authority forged in fire. I look forward to leading this company into a new era of prosperity. The game had officially changed. The fallout was immediate and for Ronan and Aurelia, utterly devastating. The moment I took my place at the head of the long table, the atmosphere in the boardroom shifted palpably. Ronan, still pale, tried to recover, managing a weak, forced smile. "Kaelen. What a surprise. Congratulations," he stammered, his usual smooth charm utterly gone. Aurelia, ever the more cunning, attempted a similar tactic, her voice sickly sweet. "Kaelen, darling, I had no idea. This is simply extraordinary. We must catch up." I simply met their gazes with an unblinking professionalism that chilled them to the bone. "Thank you, Ronan." "Aurelia." I acknowledged, my tone flat, devoid of any warmth or personal history. "Now, if you'll both refer to the agenda I've circulated, we have much to discuss regarding the company's immediate future. Your roles for now remain unaffected. However, I expect a detailed report from each of you by end of day, outlining your departmental inefficiencies and proposed solutions for immediate improvement." My words were calm, measured, utterly dispassionate. I had no intention of rehashing the past, nor of allowing my personal history to cloud my professional judgment. They were no longer Ronan and Aurelia, the betrayers. They were just two mid-level managers in my new corporation, and they would be treated as such, with fairness, but also with stringent expectations. Their attempts at familiar interaction withered under my unwavering gaze. They understood, instantly, that the power dynamic had completely inverted, and their past actions, while devastating to me, had no bearing on my current, professional conduct. The shock in the room was palpable. Other executives whispered, some casting pitying glances at Ronan and Aurelia, others looking at me with a newfound respect, or perhaps, a touch of fear. Over the next few weeks I observed them closely. Ronan, accustomed to coasting, struggled under the pressure of real accountability. He was constantly behind on reports, his excuses transparent. Aurelia, used to manipulating her way out of difficult situations, found her usual tactics ineffective against my unyielding rationality. I wasn't interested in personal drama, I was interested in results. I scheduled regular one-on-one meetings, assigning them challenging projects, demanding excellence, and providing no quarter for their past mediocrity. It was not punitive, it was simply the standard I held for everyone, and they, unlike others who rose to the challenge, found themselves consistently falling short. Months have passed since that day, and the company has undergone a profound transformation. My leadership has instilled a new energy, a focus on innovation, and a culture of accountability. Ronan and Aurelia are still within the company, but their positions have effectively plateaued. They work harder than they ever did, simply to meet the minimum standards I've set. The smugness has been replaced by a palpable anxiety, the arrogance by a quiet resentment I occasionally catch in their eyes. They rarely speak to me outside of formal meetings, and when they do, it's with a deference that is both ironic and deeply satisfying. I have not fired them, nor have I gone out of my way to make their lives miserable. My actions are purely business-driven. If they cannot meet the demands of their roles, the corporation has clear protocols for performance management. For me, life has settled into a new equilibrium. The sharp edges of the old pain have finally dulled, replaced by a profound sense of peace and accomplishment. I sleep soundly, knowing that I built this, brick by agonizing brick, failure by hard-won success. The betrayal that once threatened to consume me ultimately became the forge that tempered my spirit. My story is not one of vengeful triumph, but of self-reclamation. It is a testament to the idea that sometimes the greatest setbacks are merely detours designed to lead you to your truest self and most powerful potential. Reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my power was never about hurting them. It was about healing myself and proving to myself the boundless strength of the human spirit. Never underestimate the quiet strength of a woman who has been broken, for she knows precisely how to rebuild herself, often stronger and more formidable than ever before.